Don't touch that dial. You're tuned in to the Dread Podcast Network.
Welcome to Development Hell. For every horror movie that hits V.O.D, countless others end up D.O.A. Development Hell is the podcast dedicated to unearthing these cursed horror productions. We're going to find out what went wrong, and then decide if these titles still stand a shot at the green light. I am your host, Josh Korngut. I am the managing editor of Dread Central. I am also a filmmaker in Toronto, Canada. This podcast is a proud member of the Dread Podcast Network. Hi everybody, and welcome back to a brand new episode of Development Hell. Usually we are unearthing unrealized, unmade horror films on this podcast, but the true head hellhounds will know that we regularly sit down with some of the most exciting voices in horror to hear what's going on in the landscape today. Well, today is one of those days since I'm getting the chance to talk with the director and co-writer of one of the year's most exciting, most anticipated releases, Fear Street Prom Queen, which actually came out just last week. So I'm speaking with Matt Palmer. You know his name from directing and writing the 2018 thriller Caliber. We're going to unpack all of my burning questions about the latest entry in the Fear Street series, of course, based on the iconic R.L. Stine books. Okay, so let's not waste any more time before my conversation with Matt Palmer all about Fear Street Prom Queen.
This is the night we've all been waiting for. Senior prom. Welcome, class of '88!
You want to be prom queen.
I just don't want you to embarrass yourself.
This is shady side. Nice girls don't win.
Hi, nice to meet you, Josh. Nice to meet you, Dread Central audience. Yeah, I'm Matt Palmer, the co-writer and director of Fear Street Prom Queen, the new Fear Street movie.
How did you get into genre when you were younger? Like, what was your first introduction?
So it happened because I had a friend at school. I was actually at boarding school, and I had a friend who we were about 16, and he was so into cinema. He used to go to the cinema like all the time, and he had this kind of fistful of ticket stubs from all the movies he'd been to, and then he'd get, before anyone really did this, he'd get posters from the video shop, and he'd make these special bespoke like sort of hanging displays of his favorite movies all over his room. And that really kind of got me. I was like, I liked movies, but it just made movies feel like the most exciting thing in the world. And Deep Red Horror Handbook that Charles Balin wrote. So I'd go to his room and read the Deep Red Horror Handbook and read about these movies like Henry or Last House on Dead End Street. And I was just like, what the hell is all this shit? And that led me just into horror cinema like Stine with, I guess, video nasties were a big thing over in the UK. So I wanted to see all the video nasties. And then I got into Argento, and that was it, really. I was off and addicted.
From an outsider's perspective, it's like a very interesting second feature for you to be jumping into the world of Fear Street after your first film, which to my understanding was like a festival hit.
Yeah, I mean, the funny thing about Caliber, like I finished Caliber, and you don't know with your first film. I was like, I like it. I think it works. And then it actually was rejected by about 10 film festivals in a row. And I was like, shit, there's something wrong with the movie. And because I'm so close to it, I don't know what it is. I can't see it. But there's a problem here. And so I was on a total downer and like really distraught. And then, there'd been this conversation about Netflix buying it. And this was really at the moment when Netflix went from being Netflix to Netflix, expanding massively really quickly. So that was super exciting. And then Netflix very kindly allowed us to screen it at the one festival, which we got into, which was Edinburgh. And then the film became a really big hit at Edinburgh, won the top prize. Stephen King tweeted about it. We got great reviews from all the press, but we didn't get into any film festivals apart from Edinburgh. Like everyone turned us down. So it was kind of worth it in the long run because I went from this like panic that the movie sucked to like this like euphoria that like Stephen King had tweeted about it, and it was doing well with all the reviews and it was on Netflix, but it was a really strange journey.
Yeah, I mean, it's very funny how the public's opinion can shift so quickly. Yeah, well, it must have been insane hearing from Stephen King. Did you have like a history being a fan of his work growing up?
Yeah, I mean, 100%. Like, the sort of first wave of Stephen King adaptions were happening when I was kind of, I guess, when I was 17 onwards. Like Pet Cemetery and It and all those movies came out. And one thing I really remember is on the Clive Barker Hellraiser poster, there was a Stephen King quote, which was, "I've seen the future of horror. His name is Clive Barker."
Hmm.
So, yeah, I was a big fan of Stephen King's stuff, and The Shining, obviously, that's a complete masterpiece. So, I mean, basically, Stephen King's tweet was our entire
Yeah.
entire publicity campaign for Caliber.
I
Um,
mean, it would do it, yeah.
but I think what maybe you were hinting at before is to go from Caliber, which is a kind of grounded psychological thriller, to Fear Street, which is very much pure genre, like subgenre slasher horror movie, would seem to be quite a quite a jump. But the thing is, I've actually said this in pitch meetings to people. I kind of feel like there's two of me. Or at least there's two filmmakers in me. One is the kind of big fan of Deliverance, big fan of thrillers, big fan
Uh-huh.
of grounded stuff. And the other half of me is I've run a horror film festival in Edinburgh for the last 15 years, showing like 5 movies in a row all the way through the night, just trash horror classics from the 70s and 80s.
Mhm.
So it probably on paper looks like a big leap, but it's actually just the other side of my interest in cinema, really.
Is this something that you pursued, or was there like a lunatic at Netflix that had a vision to sort of connect you with this project?
Well, it was Corey and Caroline, the producers at Churnin, who are basically bringing the Fear Street franchise to the world. And just when the first Fear Street movies were about to be released on Netflix, I was approached via my agent, and they were looking potentially for more trilogies, maybe for a TV show, maybe for standalone movies. And
Hmm.
as part of the approach, they had a précis of 10 of the novels they thought might make the best adaptions. Prom Queen just jumped from the page and grabbed me by the throat because I was like, I think in the first instinct, like in the first instance, I was always a really big fan of Happy Birthday to Me. The
That's
slasher
a
movies that I like are
crazy
kind of
one.
off the beaten track and the crazy ones.
Yeah.
And and there was just a bit of shared DNA between Happy Birthday to Me, which, the tagline makes it sound like it's gonna be about someone killing the top 10 class snobs. And in the movie, that kind of gets a bit lost in the post. But I really like that idea of like somebody killing the it kids. It's like, is this a modern movie like with social media about like the popular kids being killed? And then suddenly when I read the Fear Street premise, I was like, oh wow, that's kind of like it's the same, like someone's killing the popular kids, but you also get all the cool prom shit as well. And you get dancing and you get the murder. And oh my God, I'm so excited about this. I have to pitch it to them. And by the time we pitched, I was like, I really, really hope they like this because I'm already so excited about it. There's no going back.
Well, you have a late 80s setting here that you played with, and it is reminiscent of some of those bonkers slashers from that time. But as you said, social media, it hit me like, what a relief, like what a breath of fresh air that you have these characters that don't have to deal with that. Was there ever a thought of modernizing it, or was that setting always on your mind?
Well, I think because the first like three Fear Street movies are all period specific, it felt like this was always going to be period specific. I mean, the funny thing is my agents, like when I first got my agents after Caliber, they told me the one thing that was unpitchable was period horror. So when someone approached me and said they wanted period horror, I was like, oh my God, this is like, this is exactly what I want to do. And I agree. I mean, it's so, I mean, I think the smart ways of dealing with the phone thing. I remember like a couple of times when I was younger met Richard Stanley, the director of Hardware and what would have been The Island of Dr. Moreau. And I was like, oh God, I hate like how in modern films you have to deal with like phones and stuff like that. And he was like, no, you just have to be creative. Somebody should be pointing their phone in the air to try and get a signal, and that's when you chop their arm off with the axe. And I was like, that's really cool. And I tried to take that to heart, but I was always like, it's kind of just gets in the fucking way. Do you know what I mean? I'd much prefer there was no phones because I don't want to sit in the cinema and look at somebody else's phone.
Do you think it takes away from horror in a way? Like, does it takes away from the believability of isolation and all of those fun tropes that we got to play with in the 80s and 90s?
I think it definitely makes it more challenging. It's there's just particularly with with thriller and with horror too, there just becomes believability problems, and you kind of have to, in a way, you kind of always grimace a little bit when there's a line after like 15 minutes of the movie of, oh my God, I've got no signal out here. But
Uh-huh.
I'd almost rather like deal with the grimace and just be done with it than have to actually like watch people texting, somebody's gonna kill me, come and say. I mean, it's just so tiring.
I feel that way totally. Um, it's been a minute since I saw the first three films, but my
Mhm.
perception was that your film did share tonally with those films, but also it took a different tonal direction, maybe something a little more camp. Would
Mhm.
you agree with that? Did you purposefully sort of go in a more, I don't want to say lighthearted, but in a campier direction?
I think so. I mean, like, there's definitely an element where with Prom Queen, I'm into a lot of different horror and a lot of different cinema, and essentially Prom Queen is the kind of sum of all my movie influences. So I think, because I'm super into like melodrama and why I always like wilder stuff. So like it'll seem like an oblique reference, but like, I like stuff that's crazy like Showgirls. So I guess in terms of the camp stuff, it's just that we've kind of pitched things up a little bit so the mean girls are really super mean and but I think also, those 80s slashers, like I kind of wanted the kill scenes to be fun as well as
Mm,
scary. It just kind of felt like everything led in a certain direction. But I also think it would be super helpful in terms of a franchise. I think there's just this huge potential for the Fear Street franchise in that if every film was like the first three Fear Street movies, then people would like that to begin with, but it just closes off so many potential avenues. And I think the
yeah.
the great thing about Chernin and Corey and Caroline is that they're looking for different directors with different visions. And I feel like once that pattern is set, what it could mean is that people are slightly wrong-footed every time by the new Fear Street movie, and it's something they cool that they can really enjoy, but it wasn't quite like the others, or it was these ones were a bit like this new trilogy was a bit like that one, but then this new standalone is a bit like the original trilogy. I just think it could keep things fresh over time
Mhm.
and will really attract some interesting filmmakers.
I have heard you maybe express that you're not a huge fan of the term elevated horror for some pretty like clear reasons. But at the same
Um,
time, there's something like very elevated about this film too. So do you think that that title or like that category is shifting and evolving at all?
I think the reason that I'm a little suspicious of elevated genre is it's because I feel like it plays back into this idea that horror is shit. Do you know what I mean? And like horror is fundamentally shit and can only be better if it's somehow elevated from its shitness.
Hmm.
Like that's just never the way that I've seen cinema. I think horror is like one of the most exciting genres in cinema. It's always been important in terms of like representing personal and societal fears. And I
Mhm.
think loads of movies from the past have done that in really sophisticated and clever ways and have said stuff about loads of different things and areas and subjects and themes. So I just think there's good horror movies and there's bad horror movies. There's not elevated horror movies and normal horror. I just think I think it's an industry term
Mhm.
for people who are embarrassed about the idea of making a horror movie.
I was reading an interview where you were talking about it, and I definitely agree with your stance on it there. You were talking about the mean girl element of this film, and something I love very much on a personal level is getting to know a mean girl or a girl bully. And I think what we have here is one of the best that I have seen in a very long time. And I think a lot has to do with the casting. What was it like working with her, Fina, right? What was that process like? Did she evolve the role at all after casting, or was it always kind of on the page that way?
I think it was on the page that way, but there's a curious thing, and it happened with some of the performances in Caliber. Like the way that the actor the way the actor or actress interprets the words on the page can give the words far more dimension than they might have seemed to have. I mean, definitely we were trying to do layers with Tiffany's character, but I just, from the moment I saw Fina's audition tape, I was just like, holy shit. And then she came on set and some of the ways she performed those lines, I was literally like, and in fact the whole of the crew were just slightly stunned. There's a scene in the corridor when two characters face off and one of them's Fina, and it was literally like spine tingling.
Mm-hmm.
And she seemed, she's still young, but there's a sort of timelessness about her performance and the sense that she's a much older soul than the than the character is an older soul than their age. That's fantastic. And just literally yesterday, I heard that she'd been nominated for Tony, and I'm like, that is absolutely no surprise to me.
Yeah.
She is enormously talented.
It's crazy now that that play is really taken over the world. I'm very happy for her. So have you had a chance to
Mhm.
see it? I know you're kind of you're
I
located a
haven't
little
had
bit
the
far away.
No, I'm in Edinburgh, so I haven't had a chance to go over to
Yeah.
New York, but I've been hearing really great things about the play. But honestly, the whole cast
I
here,
was
like,
going to say, yeah, she's not the only one. It's funny because I would call them sort of maybe newcomers to the scene, but they all have such like gravitas, especially the lead, India. Like,
mhm,
she's pretty brand new, doesn't have that many credits, but when you watch her on screen, it's like there's so much confidence and very classic, like final girl nuances. What was the
mhm.
casting like for her?
I mean, the casting was, it's casting's really fascinating because, we had Carmen Cuba who cast Stranger Things, and Carmen is probably the best casting agent for like teenagers in the universe. So that was huge. But then in terms of like so everyone's at the beginning, Carmen had a really interesting approach because everyone auditions for Laurie, which I'm not used to sort of working that way. So for example, Fina's tape came in and she's auditioning for Laurie.
Hmm.
And I was like, okay, she's great, but let's see her do Tiffany. But then there's literally like 500 to 1,000 tapes come in for Laurie's. And you're watching and you're watching and you're watching. And then suddenly India just jumps out. And you're like, it's funny. It's the same with Martin on Caliber. It's like the tape comes in, you see it, and you're like, and it's almost like the whole character just reorganizes itself around that. You're like, that's Laurie. So now she is Laurie, and then the whole. I mean, she's yeah, she was she had very Laurie vibes from the start, but it's like it's just a kind of, I guess what I'm trying to say is a concrete moment where you just like, there's Laurie,
Hmm.
and she had to go through like, because she was a newcomer, she had to go through like 4 or 5 different tapings, and the thing that was obvious about India from the start is just that like that quality over and over again. Like every tape, it's just that's a great tape. She do a
Mhm.
different. That's a great tape. And but the thing that I think was most amazing is with it being like I think her first. I think she did a TV movie when she was younger. This is her first film role. I mean, to come and do the lead and to do Laurie's arc so well and just to inhabit every single day and then to do the horror scenes and to do the chase scenes, it's like it's a
Yeah.
really it's a really big job and I just think I'm so proud of what she did and she was fearless from day one.
A protagonist is especially difficult because it's so easy for them to become boring or
Yeah,
maybe
yeah,
not
yeah.
fully rounded as an audience conduit. And she definitely evaded all that. Another, we could talk about everybody in the film, but another person that really stood out to me was Susanna Sun, another
Yeah.
person who has very few credits to her name, although the credits themselves are pretty phenomenal. And
Yeah,
then
Red Rock.
yeah, yeah. And the Idol, very fascinating resume. What was it like working with her? What was she like on set? What was, her yeah, as an actor, what was that collaboration like?
I mean, honestly, they were all great because I think there was a kind of mutual thing where it was funny because a bunch of the actors came on the first day. I saw them in groups, and the same thing happened in both. I basically said to them, like, I'm really excited that you're here. I'm really excited to be working with you. Your tapes were great. If there's anything in the script that you don't really understand or anything you think could be better or any ideas you have, just let me know. Both groups of them stared at me slightly stunned. And I was like, what, basically. And they were like, oh, this never happens. Like we're taught to go on set, say the lines, not ask any questions and just do the work. Who the fuck would want that? It's like, obviously, you have to have the actors invested in the material. And if they have questions, they need to be asking questions. If they have ideas, you want to hear I was just absolutely stunned that that would be a thing, you know?
Yeah.
So I feel like it started really well because they were really excited to have some kind of stake in things. I was excited to have such a talented and clever bunch of actors around.
Yep.
And so it was kind of like that with all of them. I mean, I think if we're talking about Susie, like I think the thing that's amazing about Susie, all of the actors have like sort of different, like sort of superhero skills. And Susie's is this ability to occasionally just cut really deep and soulful and
Uh-huh.
emotional. And when she looks upset in the movie,
Yeah.
just your heart breaks for her. Like I just think she's amazing she's a great actress across the board, but I think she's particularly good at emotional moments.
Mm-hmm. It's gonna be interesting in 10 years when they're all like huge stars looking back on this.
Like Ella, like I cannot believe that Ella Rubin like did because we were like, well, she'd never play Melissa because the other roles were we really wanted to cast Ella, but the other roles were taken, and it was like, would she do Melissa? And the moment that Ella signed up for Melissa, like
Huh.
Tiffany's best friend, the whole movie was just elevated up a level.
I have so much else I want to talk about, but the casting is like so interesting to me. I love in horror like this taking like a hard look at the adult characters in
Hmm.
teen genre. I'm like always kind of most interested in them, and you having people like Lily Taylor and Catherine on this was very cool because they have such horror pedigree with Alien, and I mean with Lily
Hmm.
it's like a million different things. Were there any kind of like blue sky casting choices for the adults that maybe didn't work out or that like just wasn't really on the table for you?
No, actually.
You got what you wanted.
I mean, the thing was, I was really lucky because I'd had meetings with Catherine because we shared an agent at one point, and I knew that Catherine really liked Caliber,
Mm.
um, and I was like, you know what, I'm gonna try and get her to do this, I mean, Catherine's a super, she's a super high level talented actress, and I was like. I don't think she would take a slasher movie normally, but what I'm going to try and do is I'm going to try and leverage my Caliber like credits with her
Smart.
in order to get Catherine to play Nancy Falconer, which would just be the most epic thing ever. And it was funny because the first meeting we had, she was like, script, not what I was expecting, which was basically coded language for like, you're doing a slasher movie. But then I just started talking to her about the role and getting her more excited and managed to hook her. And I was just like, I mean, I just think she's elevated the movie like beyond. She's so talented and she's so watchable.
It's kind of hard communicating to people that may be a little bit outside of this genre why it's so special and how it has so many different layers to it. So if you were like, I don't know, stuck in an elevator with like one of your parents' friends, how do you pitch this project to them? Like, how do you get that across?
Yeah, it's hard. It's hard, you know. I mean,
Yeah.
you know what was cool is Catherine came in to do an ADR session,
Mhm.
and she was watching a scene in the movie, and she went, "Oh, this is a lot of things all at once," and I was like,
Yeah.
"That's exactly what I was hoping," you know. And I could see that she was excited about her performance, and she was excited about the movie. I mean, Lily as well. You know,
Oh,
Lily
totally.
was. She just sent me a text and she was, what about Lily Taylor for Breckenridge? And I was like, oh my God, that's amazing. And then immediately I went and watched onto YouTube to look for Lily clips, and it had this amazing clip of her in Abel Ferrara's The Addiction.
Haven't seen it.
And it's like it's a pretty strange movie that. It's not my favorite Abel Ferrara movie, and it's quite arty and difficult. But like on YouTube there's essentially a 2 minute scene where the camera just holds on Lily for like a minute and a half. And I was like, that's it, right? You know,
I
I
was
mean,
excited to see her there. Her performance in The Haunting has
mhm,
always stuck with me. She makes the perfect, what I forget that character's name, Eleanor, maybe? She makes a perfect
mhm.
Eleanor. There's something so haunting about her. And there's a little bit of that with her here too. You never know, like, you're not sure what is going on with her ever, really.
No, no, no. I mean, yeah, she's just got a sort of lightness about her. And she's like that. She's like that in person. She's very cool and chilled out and just has this kind of infectious energy and just this
Yeah.
kind of magic about her, you know? And obviously Chris Klein as well, like
Yeah.
all of our and yeah, I mean all of our kind of older parents and teachers cast were, you know, was super great as well.
It's a bit of a pivot, but we were talking about camp earlier, and
Hmm.
I find, with the critics and filmmakers I know, it's kind of a point of contention. So I want to ask your opinion. Do you think camp can be weaponized on purpose? Do you think it is something that a creative person can use as a tool? Or do you think it has to kind of always be organic and happen, not by the choice of the filmmaker, and that it's kind of like how it's perceived?
I just think maybe it needs to be. I think when it goes wrong is when it's not grounded. Do you know what I mean? So the thing about Prom Queen is there's an element of campness and there's an element of heightened feverish kind of melodrama. But the movie's also grounded by India and Susanna as the central friendship. And also, I would say, even in some of the bigger in inverted commas performances, like, you know, Fina's obviously pretty feral at times in this movie.
Right.
But the thing is, earlier in the chat, you were talking about how you felt like she had layers and she was like a nuanced bad girl. And I feel like if it's just somebody going ape shit,
It's two-dimensional. I'm a queer horror fan, and I find that we are very much drawn to that trope when it's done right, when it's done with
mm,
dimension, because
mhm.
you kind of root for them. And I felt that way a little bit here. Yeah.
I mean, I guess for me, it's always been like I just find that if something is kind of camp but also has some content,
Hmm.
it just starts to I can't quite
It's a
explain it properly. The stuff starts to feel like a big dinner to me, and I'm like,
okay.
I can feed on it. Do you know what I mean? I'm like, oh, this is juicy. Do you know what
Yeah,
I mean?
that's true. But Troll 2 is delicious and a full meal also in its own ways. Um,
I've shown Troll 2 quite a lot.
I
Like,
had a
I,
feeling. How,
yeah,
yeah. What's the name of you said you have a festival of like bonkers retro stuff? What's it called?
it's called All Night Horror Madness.
Okay, I gotta get to that one day. That sounds like a good time.
Yeah, we showed Troll 2 at the last one at like 4 o'clock in the morning, which is a bit of
Oh,
a mind melter.
have you seen the documentary Best Worst Movie?
I have. It's
Oh,
great.
it's so good. I was at a premiere and the dentist guy was there, and I don't think I've ever been so starstruck in my life.
Yeah, it's quite I mean I love bad movies, so like I'm a huge
Me
fan
too.
of that. I'm a huge fan of The Room. There's another one called Samurai Cop.
That I have not seen, so that's good
That's
to know.
completely. And also,
Good title.
I love horror movies that are mental like that, like Pieces.
Pieces is crazy. Yeah.
Pieces is completely apeshit, and like I've screened that's probably the key movie for All Night Horror Madness. Like we've screened it about 3 or 4 times, and people literally lose their shit when they watch it. It's
I
amazing.
own that and I'm very proud of it. You know, for fans of this film, if you could give them some recommendations for outside of the box, maybe a little bit harder to find or lesser known horror, like what would you recommend?
Well, I mean, he's a bit love it or hate it, but I'm a huge Argento fan, so like Tenebrae, and because the thing is, you realize
Crazy.
that the new generation, there might be really big movies from the past that they've not seen. So it's like, the Argento stuff like Suspiria, Inferno,
Mm-hmm.
Tenebrae, Deep Red. But then in
So
terms
good. Yeah.
terms of slashers,
It doesn't
like
have to be a slasher though. I mean, Tenebrae is the one that
like
has the scene where someone's arm gets
mm,
cut off and they like spray paint the wall with blood. Get that
yes.
on TikTok and the whole world will be watching that movie soon. So
I mean it's a big
beautiful.
people who know Tenebrae will spot a little bit of Tenebrae DNA in Prom Queen for
I
sure.
I was thinking that too.
There was actually supposed to be a clip from Tenebrae, but we dropped the scene that there was going to be, and it was going to be the blood spray in the wall
Oh,
scene.
really? Why did you have to
Yeah,
get rid of it?
it just got lost dramatically in the script writings. Laurie and Megan having like a pre-prom chat,
That makes sense.
um,
Yep.
and I was really excited about that scene because Laurie sees the scene you've just been talking about, and then said to Megan, "What's this? The new John Hughes?" Which I was really
That's
pleased with
so
that.
that's funny and cute. And I'm not gonna give anything away, but like, it makes sense for those two creatively that they would be into that
It
or at
does.
least be checking that out, especially one of them.
Yeah.
So that's fun. I don't know.
In terms of, sorry to
No,
interrupt,
no,
like in terms of other Sleepaway Camp, Happy Birthday to Me, Pieces, like three bonkers. And I like Hospital Massacre, which is shit, but I
that's the
still
only one I
really,
haven't heard of actually. I'm assuming
it's
it's a lot what it sounds like.
it does what it says on the tin, that one. But
Great.
then, like big movies for me, like Basket Case, Reanimator, and I wonder how many people like this new generation haven't seen like Basket Case and Reanimator, which are just stone cold classics.
But we're not really from that generation, and we did find them. So I have hope that the new freaks will as well.
I just think that 80s horror, like it's worth investigating back to front, because there's so many gems.
Oh yeah, and 70s horror too, which is like a little more lost in the weeds. Was was there a movie or maybe a couple of movies that like ruined your childhood that like really fucked you up at a young age? It doesn't necessarily have to be horror. Like for me, it was Nurse Betty for some reason. There was like a
Oh, that's really fucking weird movie.
there's a gruesome scalping in the middle of that movie that I was not prepared for. So anything like that.
I mean, two things come to mind. One was that actually the thing that kind of upset me the most was I saw a trailer like on a VHS tape. I can't remember what the movie I was actually watching was, but there was a horror trailer. And I haven't seen it since, but it was some kind of possessed house and all these doors were slamming all the way through the trailer, just slam, slam, slam. And I was just like, oh my God. And it scared the shit out of me. But I've never, weirdly, because I show trailers at All Night Horror Madness.
Uh-huh.
So I've been through all the horror trailers and whatever this trailer was that really fucked me up, doesn't seem to actually exist. But also when I watched like when I was about 17, I watched Texas Chainsaw and I watched it in the house on my own.
That'll do it.
But what happened was I was sitting in the living room and it finished and I was kind of sitting there and taking it in. And it wasn't like the movie scared me. The movie just upset me and unsettled me. But then 5 minutes later, this tray fell off a surface in the kitchen and clattered to the ground. And that's what did it. The combination of that plus Texas Chainsaw and staying in the house on my own that night was when the tray fell that I realized how upset the movie had made me.
Yeah, it's like it broke. That's what broke you. That's very interesting. Also, that trailer that doesn't exist anymore. I'm fascinated. Like that could be a
I should
documentary.
go looking for it. I should go looking for it.
Yeah, or maybe it doesn't exist anymore. Maybe there's like a Stranger Things element going on here.
Maybe it was a dream. That's
maybe.
a decent concept, right? So
Not bad. These trailers that don't exist anymore. There were trailers for movies that like got canceled. I remember there was like maybe just a poster or some kind of promo for Last House on the Left 2. Obviously, that never happened. Like there's a lot of lost horror out there. So
well, that's what you guys specialize in, right? It's really interesting.
that's my whole beat, really. So it's definitely what fascinates me the most. Was there ever like an announcement for a movie that you were like, wow, I'm so excited, and then it didn't happen?
You know what I heard recently? I heard that Peter Jackson wrote a sequel to Nightmare on Elm Street.
And we've got a whole episode on that here. So yeah, it's crazy. It's called The Dream Lover. So he definitely gets like a girlfriend in it, I think, at some point. But what's fascinating about that unmade movie is that it's about the kids of Elm Street have defeated Freddy. So he's like in the other world and he has no power, and kids will knock themselves out on purpose to go beat him up and make fun of him and taunt him.
Oh.
Yeah, so the tables turn, and then of course, he gets one of them and then starts to rebuild, and it's actually kind of brilliant. So I wish that could have happened.
So did you read the script or?
I got bits and pieces. I did my very best. I didn't get the whole script, but I got summaries and I got scenes, and usually I can get a script if it's out there, but that one, no. But I wish.
It's kind of fascinating, because maybe if Peter Jackson had made that and it'd gone really big, maybe he would have had a whole other horror career.
Yeah, and maybe they wouldn't have given him something so prestige, but that is where he got his start at New Line Cinema.
Right.
Who made those movies eventually. So it's a crazy industry that you're a part of, and anything can happen. If when the whole world is obsessed with this new film and you get a call and you're given carte blanche to any franchise, what do you pick?
I've got a take on Nightmare on Elm Street, but I think the rights are really messy at the moment.
Yes. Why have we not had him in 15 years? It's brutal.
Yeah, I would love to do I should shut up just in case the rights become available, but I've just got one idea that I think could raise the stakes a little bit in the second half of it, and just it could be. I mean, that's the first. Nightmare on Elm Street's a great movie, but in particular, the first half of it is just unfucking believable. That stuff in the classroom with that floor, and it's just possessed.
It's also beautiful. It's one of my favorite movies of all time too. 100%. I can imagine why you'd want to keep cards to your chest on this one. You never know. But there is a world where you put something like this out there and it manifests. So is there anything you could tell me about the idea that you would have for a new Nightmare?
It's just this one thing that I don't want to say it.
Yeah.
There's this one thing that I think makes Freddy not as scary as he could be. And if you just turn the screws a little bit, I think you could really make an incredible. Yeah. But I just think the first, it was funny because I was thinking about a couple of years ago, I was thinking about what is the thing that might really resonate with teenagers these days. And I started thinking about all the horror classics, and the thing about Nightmare on Elm Street with the fact that the parents have just essentially sold out the kids. I just feel like, you wouldn't want to dig deep down. You wouldn't actually want to do this literally in the movie, but I just feel like, without getting too heavy, the whole global warming thing, it's like parents sort your fucking shit out. Do you know what I mean? Like, what the actual fuck? So I just feel like that Nightmare on Elm Street sense that the parents have just turned their back and they're just drunk and useless. Just feels like it feels very now, you know.
I love that. That is kind of brilliant. The whole, dealing with boomers scenario. That's very good. And I love those psychotic parents. They're so good throughout all of them. In the third one too, Arquette's
Mhm.
moms is like they're terrible. And that's why I do love watching them. So
Yeah. Well, the guy who wrote Madonna is always talking about the mom
the first one.
in the first one, and
Yeah, I love her.
she's hilarious.
So funny. And I don't know if now that's camp, I think, to some degree. So and then
Yeah, well, that's the thing about camp, right? It kind of sneaks. It's like if you're going to heighten things, then there's a very thin line between heightening and camp. I find tone in movies very interesting because, you know, it's like it can very easily snap. You know that woman, the one I'm talking about in Troll 2?
yes.
That one with the glasses on? It's like the
I
whole
thought I knew, but now I know. Yes, okay. What a brilliant woman. Oh yeah,
yeah.
the queen of the queen of Nilbog, yeah. Yeah.
But she'll like the whole movie is heightened and completely mad, and then she steps in and you're like, that's the wrong movie.
Yeah.
In the wrong movie. Do you know what I mean? And
Not, but yeah, she is. She is and she's not. Yeah. I mean, because she's obviously the only one acting too. Yeah, I love that movie. She's crazy. Where's her movie at? I want a spin-off with her one day and the popcorn.
I like the dad. It's funny all that they're not acting, but they kind of are. It's weird. It's a weird movie.
The story behind it is just as fascinating as the movie itself. So yeah, I've showed so many people that film. So it's a good one.
It's very unique.
It sure is. This has been awesome. Thank you for chatting with me today. I can't wait for everyone in the world to see this film. What else, to leave us? Like, what are you up to next? Like, what are you working on now? It doesn't necessarily have to be a film, but like, what's going on in your world?
I'm kind of that thing I was talking about earlier, where there's two filmmakers in me. Like
Yeah.
I'm kind of pursuing both. So there's another horror movie that we're at sort of early stages of that we're quite excited about. And then there's a thriller that's a little bit more grounded, which is kind of like a utopian teen thing. So kind of early stages of developing those two. We're quite excited about both of them. And obviously very, very excited for people to see Prom Queen.
You can kind of be like a James Wan where you do like the big genre thing and then the small genre thing, and you never know. Where can people find you on the internet if you want to be found online?
Not very easily. I'm not much of a I got told by the publicist on Caliber just to stay off the internet. But I can be found at All Night Horror Madness, which is the name of that is Romero Cronenberg, which is on Facebook. That's pretty much the only way to get in touch with me.
Thank you so much for listening to Development Hell. If you enjoy this podcast, then please do us a major favor of leaving us 5 stars and writing a positive review. It really makes all the difference in the world. We'll see you next week with a brand new episode of Development Hell.
Thank you for listening to the Dread Podcast Network.